to another edition of Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal. We are now inside the Big House Museum in Macon, Georgia, former residence of the Allman Brothers Band. You know, at a time in its day, Macon actually rivaled Nashville in terms of potentially being a music mecca. In its day, Macon saw the birthplace of Southern rock. Of course, everybody knows Little Richard, Otis Redding. James Brown even recorded his first single right here in Macon, Georgia. Well, another group with extreme ties to the mid-state and to Macon with the Allman Brothers Band. Originating out of Florida, first incarnated as the Allman Joys, the brothers would go on to be founders, if you will, of the Southern rock movement, and legendary performances from the Fillmore East to the Macon City Auditorium and across the globe. The Big House Museum is our stop this week on Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal, where the saying is, if these walls could only talk, here they do just that.
It's a sound called Southern rock, a blending of musical styles and genres that took root in the South and, well, in particular, in Macon, Georgia. At the forefront of the roots of Southern rock is the group called the Allman Brothers, whose popularity and impact on the recording industry was recognized this year during the Grammy Awards, when they were presented with the Lifetime Achievement Award. The recognition was well-deserved. The group was founded and led by guitarist Duane Allman, and although his life would be cut short before the group reached worldwide acclaim, his vision, memory, talent, and dreams are still being fulfilled 4 decades after his untimely death. The Big House Museum, well, it's just that, a large Tudor-style home built around 1900, which would become an oasis for the band during the early 1970s. The couples you see would split the rental fee, and the women and children were its full-time residents. Duane, Barry, and Greg, you see, were on the road. Big House curator E.J. DeVercatus picks up the story.
The Allman Brothers Band, they actually formed in Jacksonville, Florida, but within a month they moved to Macon, Georgia, basically because Phil Walden had signed Duane Allman and left it up to Duane to put a band together, and Duane did assemble the Allman Brothers Band. They moved to Macon in 1969, spring of 1969, and they all crashed in a one-bedroom apartment for a while. Obviously, those were the lean times. And once they had a little bit more money, they still weren't were a relatively unknown band. But once they had a little bit more money, they decided to kind of pool their resources together and find a home, like a communal home, where they could all kind of use it as their home base for their wives and children and friends and roadies, family. And basically it was Barry Oakley, the founding bass player, and his wife Linda, and Barry's sister Candace, that signed the lease on this place in early 1970 for $225 a month. And everyone else who stayed here, which could range from 6 to 12, 15 people, pitched in on the rent. So the more people that were staying here, the more they could dilute that rent. And again, they moved in here, a relatively unknown band, and in early 1970. And when they moved out, the first week of 1973, they were pretty close to being the #1 band in the country, but they had lost their 2 leaders, Duane Allman, their founder, and Barry Oakley, their founding bass player. So it's a wonderful, beautiful, but also tragic story. But the music lives on. We have amazing records that we can listen to for forever. And this legacy that was started by those 6 men, including Duane and Barry, but Butch and J-Mo and Greg and Dickie, has just reached all ends of the earth, and the band still thrives today and plays sold-out shows whenever they announce concerts. So this house really is the last vestige of that original brotherhood. This is the last place that they all kind of called home.
The band was first incarnated by Duane and Greg back in 1963 in Jacksonville, Florida as the Escorts, and then in 1965 would become the Allman Joys. The group headed west, began recording then as the Hourglass. The band would release 2 albums as Hourglass in 1967 and '68, but didn't receive much notice. Dwayne would find a niche as a studio musician and record with such artists as Wilson Pickett, Aretha Franklin, and Percy Sledge. The release of the 1969 LP The Allman Brothers Band, though, would finally put the band on the musical map. Then in 1970, the Allman Brothers Band would begin to be recognized. They would play at venues across the country and were one of many featured performers at the Byron Pop Festival before hundreds of thousands at Hot July 4th weekend. By then, the band was made up of Dwayne, Greg, Barry, Dickie Betts, Butch Trucks, and J-Mo Johansson. The Byron Pop Festival, often called the Woodstock of the South, also showcased the talents of B.B. King, Mountain, and Jimi Hendrix, just to name a few. Artifacts at the Big House Museum highlight many of the early performances and the many different incarnations of the group. Wiggle, one of the many volunteers at the Big House, talks about experiencing the museum.
The Big House here is built on love, peace, and happiness. They was the time then, and it's up to people like us now to keep it going, and those that come under us. I see a lot of different crowds from different places. Actually, people come from all over. Today we actually had a guy from the Philippines, so that was kind of cool for us. And people come around from everywhere. No matter where they come from, they'll make a big U to swing by. So that's really kind of cool.
I know that your job takes a lot of time and effort, but it couldn't be possible without work from a lot of quality volunteers.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually have some great examples today, but there are so many people that live locally and also come from afar sometimes to help out, put in their own, give up their free time to help make this place the best that it can be. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, so our goal is really to just sustain ourselves so that we can continue to inspire people. And these wonderful volunteers give so much of their time and they pour their hearts and souls into this house. In a lot of ways, I'd say just like the way the original crew did. I feel like we have a whole new family here, and everybody has a very deep bond, and we all have the same goal to really just to be positive, to not really look for spotlight necessarily, but just to help inspire other people. When people come to this museum and they walk out with goosebumps on their arms, we've done our job.
Well, it's certainly, I've said it, if the walls could only talk, they do, literally speak to you here at the Big House Museum.
He was also quick to point out a couple of exhibit pieces that are his favorites. A vintage Gibson Les Paul guitar, played by Dwayne on 2 Allman Brothers albums and on Eric Clapton's hit, Layla. A must-have for any Allman Brothers fan is the live recording of performances at the Fillmore East. The album's still considered one of the top 50 albums ever by Rolling Stone magazine.
There's a whole lot more to see and do as we continue with our trip to the Big House Museum in Macon, Georgia. It's all coming up after this break on Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal. I hope you'll stay tuned.
Up this morning, have them say for blue. I woke up this morning, have them say for blue. Not a girl in the corner, baby. Grandma seem to have them too.
Welcome back to Todd Wilson's Georgia Journal. Hope you're enjoying our trip to the Big House, the Allman Brothers Museum here in Macon, Georgia. And joining us now, another volunteer. Most organizations, as you know, need volunteers and support. Wanda, how long have you been helping out at the Big House?
2 years now.
And over that course of 2 years, I'm sure you've seen all kinds of folks come through.
We've had people from across the ocean, the Netherlands, Sweden, all over. You just never know where they're going to come from or who's going to be here.
Now, Wanda, are you originally from Macon?
I'm from Macon, so gotta love the brothers, and it's a magical place. It really is. We've had so many people just fall in love here, and weddings here, and it's fabulous. When you walk through the door, you get the feeling.
Yeah, there is a certain air. I said earlier, as if these walls could only talk. They almost do.
Yes, you're right. You're right. You get that feeling every time you come in the house, and it's awesome.
It's a good aura. It has a good feel to it.
Exactly. Yeah, I agree.
Now, if folks are interested, I know you still have a live performing stage out back. You still have all kinds of live events that go on here year round.
We do. Spring and summer, we have what we call the backyard boogie, at least once a month. Generally, it's this type of music, but we have a little bit of everything. Once a month. Come out and see us.
Now, away from the road and working on new music, Dickie Betts would write the song Blue Sky in the front room of the big house. Some of the lyrics were inspired by a church which sits just across the highway.
Good old Sunday morning, bells are ringing everywhere. Going to Carolina, it won't be long and I'll be there.
From the spacious backyard, he would pen the words to Ramblin' Man as he watched the traffic pass by along Highway 41. Success now under their belts, and with FM stations across the world playing their music, the Allman Brothers seemed poised for even greater things. That's when tragedy would strike. Not long after Live at the Fillmore East was certified gold, that means selling 500,000 copies, Duane, founding member of the group, would be killed when his motorcycle collided with a flatbed truck on October 29, 1971. Duane was just 24 years old. The group pressed on and completed their next album, Eat a Peach. Some of the tracks even feature Duane's stellar guitar work. In fact, Rolling Stone magazine in 2011 ranked Duane Allman as the 9th greatest guitarist of all time. Now, even with the loss of their founding member, the band continued to tour and record and take pauses from the road at the big house. More success would follow with the release of Brothers and Sisters, with the addition of a new keyboard player, Chuck Leavell. Then, almost a year after the death of Duane, founding member Barry Oakley would die in another motorcycle accident. Ironically, Oakley's wreck would happen only about a mile from where Duane was killed.
The amount of work that Duane and Barry put in and did in their short lives, they both only lived to be 24. Just as remarkable as that is the fact that the other four guys, not having real leadership type personalities, that they were able to continue on and fill in those slots. I mean, eventually they hired a young virtuoso piano player named Chuck Leavell, because they really didn't want to try to replace their leader Duane Allman and fill that guitar slot, because Duane and Dickie had really pioneered the twin leads. But they didn't want to just hire another guitar player, so they got a virtuoso piano player. And in the bass playing slot, J-Mo had a childhood friend named Lamar Williams, who had played in a lot of soul and jazz bands with him growing up in Mississippi, and Lamar pretty much fit in seamlessly. And that version of the band from late '72 until about May of '76 is really the version of the band that the masses started to see, like once they got commercially huge.
Reeling from the loss of two founding members and their driving force in Duane, the band would eventually break up. But the 3 years that they shared the dreams, music, and fun at the big house still hangs heavy in the air at the home. Now, the group in its latest incarnation still tour, pack venues across the country, and over their long history have been recognized with 11 gold and 5 platinum albums. They became members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995 and Georgia's Music Hall of Fame in 1998. Along that long road, the Allman Brothers picked up some big-time fans as they sold out venues across the country and continue to do so throughout the history of lengthy performances. Some allocates coming their way from New York City Mayor Michael Bloomberg. And even a former president and Georgia resident was a big fan. The Allman Brothers Band continued to spread their unique sound, attracting fans from around the world. I happened to sit down with one such fan who was touring the big house. He was all the way from Manila in the Philippines.
We've talked a little bit about how the Allman Brothers have had such an impact on the local scene, but the Allman Brothers Band, their music is transcendent globally. Now, Ambo, am I getting that right?
Yes, Todd.
And tell me, first of all, where are you from?
I'm a Filipino. I'm from the Philippines. I reside in Manila.
Okay. Now, there's a lot of history dating back, well, I guess the U.S. involvement there in World War II and General MacArthur, and so much history there. But the Allman Brothers music reached out to you.
Allman Brothers music is huge, especially in the early 70s. Till now, we listen to this band.
Still popular today. Now, you were telling me the first album you bought was Allman Brothers?
Yep, the album Beginnings, it's the double album in vinyl. I had it, and it's a sort of an influence, especially blues, right? I had it. And we have a Filipino band. You know, the thing is, in Manila, we do cover versions. As I was saying a while ago, there's a band that covers Alice Cooper, there's a band that covers Rolling Stones, Beatles, and we have one band, Petrified Anthem. You must give me a free ticket because I'm mentioning your name. Petrified Anthem band covers straight Allman music. Yep. We all grew up with them. I think we're all of the same age.
Yeah, well, and it speaks so much to the music. What do you think is the reason for the Allman Brothers impact and the fact that it crosses so many, not only generations but different cultures?
Blues has a big influence in all music, even with jazz. You could trace a touch of blues, and then the mixture of the chemistry of this Allman Brothers band. You see, they have this black person playing the drums, and they have this, I don't know if he's Latin, playing percussions. When I analyze their music, Todd, this is not just pure rock and roll already. This has a touch of trying to incorporate percussions, and then the groove. You could call this already. It has a touch of jazz in it, but sounds southern rock country. You know, it's everything in it. You can feel it.